It begins quietly. No more alarm clocks, no more commutes, no more meetings or emails. After decades of structure and routine, retirement arrives not with a bang, but a whisper. And in that silence, many find a strange, unsettling emptiness. What do you do when the very thing that defined your identity vanishes overnight? For many, work isn't just a job. It's a symbol of purpose, value, and belonging. It's how you introduce yourself, how you spend your days, and often how you measure your worth. The day it ends, you're left staring into a mirror that no longer reflects who you once were. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in psychology, believed that the second half of life is not about accumulation, but transformation. He saw retirement not as an end, but as the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. But first, you must face the silence. And silence, as Jung warned, can be louder than any voice. In the quiet after retirement, unresolved questions rise. Who am I when I am no longer useful? What do I want beyond what I was trained to want? This is the threshold of a new journey, one not outward, but inward. All your life you played roles: parent, employee, provider, leader. But beneath the surface, a shadow followed you. Jung called it the shadow, the unconscious part of the self, made of instincts, desires, and truths we were taught to suppress. In our working years, this shadow is often buried. There is no room for it in boardrooms or busy schedules. But now, with time and reflection, it starts to stir. Have you ever felt an unexplainable melancholy after retirement? A strange discomfort, as if something long ignored is asking to be seen? This is your shadow speaking. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the parts of you that were not allowed to exist, the passions you denied, the dreams you buried, the truths you feared. Retirement gives you space to face it, not with judgment, but with curiosity. And in doing so, you begin to recover a part of yourself that had been waiting for decades. Jung believed that embracing the shadow was essential to discovering the true self, not as a return to youth, but as a reconciliation with your total being. What you once saw as flaws or failures may now reveal themselves as hidden strengths. Jung once said, "We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning." Retirement marks the entry into that afternoon, a stage of life that demands a new script, new values, and a deeper inner quest. During the first half of life, society teaches us to build careers, families, identities. But Jung saw that the second half should be about meaning, and this meaning doesn't come from the external world. It emerges from within. He called this process individuation, the path toward wholeness, where a person integrates all aspects of themselves, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow. Retirement, then, is not a retreat from life, but a return to yourself. Many fear aging because they believe it signals decline. Jung saw it differently. He believed the psyche grows until death, and that old age is fertile ground for inner transformation. He challenged us not to resist aging, but to embrace its invitation. So, what is the call of life's second half? It is the call to finally become who you were meant to be, not what society molded, but what your soul desires. You're not ending your journey, you're beginning the most authentic chapter of it. For most of your life, you wore a mask, perhaps many. In Jungian psychology, this mask is called the persona, the social face we present to the world. It's necessary. It allows us to function, to be accepted, to succeed. But what happens when the role no longer needs to be played? Retirement strips away the persona. There are no more meetings to lead, no professional image to uphold. For some, this is liberating. For others, it's terrifying. Without the persona, we are faced with a raw question: who are we underneath? You might realize that the mask you wore wasn't just a role, it became your identity. You acted confident, decisive, maybe even tough, but beneath that, there may have been tenderness, fear, or creativity you had to hide. Retirement gives you a rare gift, the freedom to remove the mask without consequence. But it's not easy. Some spend their entire lives as actors in a play they didn't write. Jung taught that true growth begins when the persona is confronted and consciously laid aside. Only then can we begin to uncover the authentic self that has been quietly waiting behind the curtain. This stage isn't about discarding everything you were. It's about integrating what was real and releasing what was merely survival. In doing so, you stop performing and start living. In a world obsessed with productivity, rest can feel like failure. But Jung believed rest, especially in later life, was sacred. Retirement opens the door to what he called the inner journey, a psychological pilgrimage toward meaning and self-realization. When you no longer have a career demanding your attention, space opens for reflection. And in that space, your true self begins to stir. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It may come as a memory, a longing, a dream, or a sudden wave of emotion you can't explain. You might feel a strange hunger, a need to create, to write, to walk in nature, or to have deep conversations. These are signals from the self, calling you back to your essence. Jung warned that ignoring this inner call leads to stagnation and despair. The second half of life isn't a time to kill time. It's a chance to deepen your soul. But to do that, you must allow the noise of the external world to fade and listen. In this journey, there are no bosses or deadlines. There is only you, your past, your unlived life, and the road ahead. This is not retreat. It is initiation. Every night, your unconscious speaks, in symbols, in riddles, in fragments of stories that vanish with the morning light. Jung believed dreams are not meaningless nonsense. They are messages from the deeper self. And in retirement, we finally have the time to listen. Perhaps you dream of a place you've never seen, or a person you haven't thought about in years. Maybe you dream of being lost, or of flying, or of speaking a truth you never dared say aloud. These are not random. They are the language of the psyche, inviting you to heal, integrate, and transform. Throughout your working life, you may have dismissed your dreams. Who had time to interpret symbols when deadlines loomed? But now, the dream becomes a doorway. Each night, your unconscious offers you a map, if only you're willing to read it. Jung encouraged people, especially in later life, to record and reflect on their dreams, not for fortune-telling, but for self-discovery. The dream world holds the parts of you that you forgot, abandoned, or feared. And when you begin to explore it, you begin to recover your wholeness. So, keep a journal by your bed. Pay attention to the patterns. The self is speaking, not in logic, but in poetry. Carl Jung described individuation as the central process of human development, the integration of the conscious and unconscious to form a complete, authentic self. It is not a luxury, it is a necessity for those who wish to age with meaning, not just memory. During our working years, we chase achievement, approval, and structure. These are necessary parts of life's first half. But Jung saw that if we carry these goals into the second half without transformation, we suffer a slow death of the spirit. Retirement can feel like a collapse only because we haven't been prepared for individuation. No one teaches us how to live when the game ends. But here's the truth. Retirement is the invitation to individuate, to step beyond roles and reconnect with the person we abandoned to survive. This process isn't comfortable. It asks you to confront regrets, unlived dreams, forgotten talents. It whispers, there is more to you than what you've done. Individuation requires a descent into the past, into the unconscious, into your shadow. It means grieving what could have been, but also celebrating what can still be. Jung warned, the greatest danger in later life is the refusal to grow inward. A man or woman who fails to individuate risks becoming a bitter echo of who they were. So, how do you begin? Start by journaling not what you did, but how you felt about who you became. Explore dreams, fantasies, childhood desires, study mythology, create, meditate, speak with a therapist trained in depth psychology. This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about becoming whole. And remember, individuation has no finish line. It is the lifelong work of discovering and honoring your truth. Retirement doesn't close the door, it opens the gate. We live in a world that fears silence. From the moment we wake up, noise floods our lives. Notifications, headlines, responsibilities. In retirement, for the first time in decades, that noise fades. And in its place is silence. At first, it can feel like absence, but silence, when listened to properly, is a gateway. Jung believed the unconscious communicates most clearly when the ego quiets down. Meditation, he suggested, isn't about emptying the mind. It's about making space for the soul to speak. In this stillness, insights rise, patterns emerge, and slowly, the fragmented self begins to cohere. But meditation isn't easy for those who've lived in perpetual motion. The retired mind often races, am I wasting time? Should I be doing something productive? That voice is the old persona clinging to a dying identity. Start small. 10 minutes. Sit. Breathe. Don't try to silence thoughts. Observe them. Let them pass like clouds. Over time, silence becomes a teacher. It reveals what you've avoided. Loneliness, longing, unexplored passions. It may bring tears. It may bring peace. But it always brings truth. Some days, meditation feels like nothing. Other days, it cracks something open, a memory, a new desire, a revelation about who you are beyond who you were. This is not spiritual fluff, it's psychological excavation. And for the aging soul, it is essential. Through silence, you meet the parts of yourself that words forgot. In the stillness, the self awakens. As you move into the later stages of life, society often wants to write you off. You're no longer at the top of your game. You're not relevant in the traditional sense, and you may not be sought after for your ideas. But Jung saw something radically different. He spoke of the wise old man and wise old woman, universal archetypes that reside in the collective unconscious, waiting to be activated in the second half of life. These are not stereotypes of the frail or passive elder. These are images of deep, hard-earned wisdom. They represent a person who has faced their shadow, embraced their pain, and transformed it into understanding. This archetype is not reserved for monks or mystics. It is within you. It is in the stories you carry, the mistakes you've made, the battles you've fought. It's the voice that says, you've been through enough to guide others now. But here's the twist. Before you can become the wise one for others, you must become it for yourself. That means revisiting your life with honesty and compassion. It means owning your wounds, not hiding them. Because wisdom is not knowledge, it is integration. Retirement can be your initiation into the role of elder, not just in age, but in essence. You are no longer just a participant in the world. You are becoming an interpreter of it. You can now see patterns where others see chaos. You can comfort where others would judge. You can teach, not with theory, but with presence. You do not become wise by accident. You become wise by choosing to alchemize your life experience into meaning. This is the hidden task of the final chapters. To awaken the archetype of the sage. Not to speak from ego, but from essence. You are not irrelevant. You are becoming irreplaceable. There comes a moment in every retired life when the mind begins to wander backwards, not out of nostalgia, but necessity. As the future becomes less crowded, the past grows louder, and Jung believed that to fully embrace the self, one must walk back through their memories, not as a tourist, but as an archaeologist of the soul. These memories are not just personal history, they are mirrors. They show you not only what you lived, but how you lived, what you feared, what you pursued, what you denied. They reveal the roles you played to survive, the dreams you postponed, the moments you compromised your truth in exchange for belonging. And now, in retirement, you have something you never had before, the time and emotional distance to explore them without being crushed by them. Start with a single memory, perhaps one that resurfaces often. Ask yourself, why does this moment return? What lesson is it still trying to teach me? The psyche doesn't bring things up randomly. It brings them up when you're finally ready to face them. You may revisit a long-forgotten humiliation, an old love, a missed opportunity. It may hurt, but Jung would say, this pain is the path, not because suffering is noble, but because healing requires exposure. When you review your life through a Jungian lens, you don't just remember, you redeem. You begin to see how the child in you shaped the adult, how your defense mechanisms served a purpose once, but no longer do, how every loss gave birth to something hidden. You don't need to rewrite your story, you need to re-understand it, to hold your past with tenderness, not shame, because it is only when we integrate our history that we stop being haunted by it. And here lies a profound truth. You cannot truly meet your future self until you have embraced your former one. Retirement is the perfect time for this sacred reconciliation. The world often tells you that retirement is freedom, freedom from alarm clocks, office politics, responsibilities. But as many retirees discover, this surface-level freedom can feel hollow. Jung challenges us to ask a deeper question. What is real freedom beyond social obligations? True freedom, he argued, is inner autonomy, the ability to live in alignment with your soul, unshackled from internalized expectations and roles. In youth, we conform because we must. We seek validation, resources, survival. But if we still conform in our later years, out of habit or fear, we've missed the purpose of aging entirely. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's discovering what you actually want, beneath layers of programming. It's asking, what do I love? Not because it's productive, but because it's mine. Maybe you want to paint, or write poetry, or walk barefoot in the woods. Maybe you want to forgive someone, or finally tell your story. Maybe you want to believe in something greater, not because someone told you to, but because it stirs your soul. This kind of freedom doesn't come easily. It requires courage, because once you start living authentically, people may not recognize you anymore. But that's okay. Jung believed that the more individuated a person becomes, the less they are understood by the collective. You are no longer a cog, you are a consciousness. And in that consciousness, you will find something priceless: peace. So ask yourself, here and now, am I free or am I still performing? True retirement is not about escaping responsibility. It's about claiming responsibility for your soul. Of all the concepts Jung gave us, perhaps none is as misunderstood or as vital as the shadow. In the popular imagination, the shadow is evil, dark, dangerous, something to eliminate. But Jung knew better. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your missing piece. It is made of everything you repressed to become acceptable. Your anger, your sexuality, your creativity, your envy, your grief. Not because these things are inherently bad, but because they threatened the identity you constructed. And over time, they became ghosts in the basement of your psyche. But here's the truth. What you repress possesses you. What you deny doesn't disappear. It distorts. And in retirement, when the distractions fade, the shadow begins to rise. You may feel anxiety, rage, sadness for no clear reason. These are signals. The shadow wants your attention. Facing it is not comfortable. It means confronting the parts of yourself you blamed others for. It means owning your contradictions. It means allowing grief to finally speak. But when you begin this work, through dream analysis, therapy, art, or solitude, you don't descend into darkness. You integrate the darkness, and in doing so, you reclaim your wholeness. The shadow holds your power, your vitality, your forgotten joy. It holds the creative force that your persona was too afraid to express. So look at the shadow not with fear, but with reverence. thank it for protecting you, and then invite it into the light, not to control you, but to complete you. Jung didn't believe in perfection. He believed in wholeness, and wholeness only comes when you are brave enough to love every part of yourself. There's a quiet crisis that many face after retirement, one rarely spoken of but deeply felt. It's the feeling that time is abundant, yet meaning is scarce. The routines are gone, the responsibilities released. But with them went a sense of direction. Who are you now, and what are you here to do? Carl Jung believed that meaning is not something the world gives you, it is something the soul creates. In your earlier life, purpose was often tied to function, job titles, family roles, financial goals. Now in this open space, you're invited to seek a purpose not based on what you do, but on who you are becoming. This is the time to ask not, what should I do today, but what does my soul long for? The answer may be unexpected. Perhaps you feel drawn to mentor others, to nurture something that grows slowly, like a garden or a story. Perhaps your purpose now is to understand deeply and patiently the life you've lived, and to pass on that wisdom. Jung insisted that meaning is what sustains the aging psyche. Without it, there is despair, but with it, life becomes sacred again. And that meaning doesn't need to be grand. Sometimes it's found in watching a sunrise, writing in a journal, or finally, learning to play the music you loved in secret. Don't chase your old rhythm. Build a new one that honors who you are now, one that feels less like a race and more like a ritual. Purpose in later life is not about legacy in the eyes of the world. It's about peace in the heart of the self. As we age, we begin to feel the pull toward something deeper, something that transcends the ego, the mind, and even our personal history. Jung described this as the soul's search for the numinous, the sacred. Experience that defies explanation, yet gives life its most profound meaning. But what if traditional religion no longer speaks to you? What if the doctrines feel distant, yet your heart still yearns for the divine? This is the spiritual task of the second half of life, to find a path not given to you, but born within you. Jung did not separate psychology and spirituality. He believed they were two sides of the same inner journey. The unconscious, in his view, was not just a reservoir of memory, it was a sacred terrain. Dreams, synchronicities, archetypes, they were not just symbols, but messengers. This stage of life invites you to slow down and begin asking the deepest questions of all. What am I, really? What connects me to the universe? What happens beyond this life? And what am I meant to do with the time I have left? You may find answers in meditation, in silence, in poetry, in art. You may rediscover God not in temples, but in trees, in your breath, in the eyes of someone you love. The sacred is not lost. It's just waiting for you to stop and listen. And as you walk this personal, intimate spiritual path, something shifts. Fear of death softens. The need for external validation fades. You no longer seek to control life. You begin to participate in its mystery. Spirituality in later life is not about salvation. It's about communion with the self, with the cosmos, and with the great unfolding that is still happening within you. Every great story ends not with despair, but with revelation. The same is true of life, if we're brave enough to see it. Jung believed that the final stage of life is not a slow fade, but the climax of the hero's journey. And in that journey, aging is not decay, it is initiation. You've lived, you've loved, you've failed and succeeded, you've carried burdens and survived storms. But now comes the most important part, turning all of that experience into wisdom. The hero in mythology does not end in action, but in integration. And that's where you are. Aging gives you a panoramic view of life. You begin to see the larger patterns, the mythic structure. You realize everything meant something. Every heartbreak had a lesson. Every joy held eternity for a moment. And now, your role is not to strive, but to be. You become the storyteller, the guide, the witness. You hold a perspective that the young cannot access, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack time. And now you have time, not to be useful in the old sense, but to be whole. The final chapter, if lived consciously, can be the most beautiful because it is the chapter of truth. There are no more masks to wear, no ladders to climb, only the self, bare, breathing, and luminous in its simplicity. And when your time comes to leave, you do not go as someone who is lost. You go as someone who arrived. You are not closing the book. You are completing the story. After everything we've explored together about purpose, identity, silence, dreams, and the long-forgotten voices within, it's only natural to sit quietly for a moment and ask, what does it all mean? The second half of life isn't just a continuation, it's a rebirth. And the deeper we go into ourselves, the more we discover that we were never meant to be one thing, play one role, or carry one identity. We are mosaics, layered in shadow and light, formed by pain and passion, driven by longing, softened by grace. When we stop moving, stop performing, and finally look inward, we realize the journey wasn't toward the world, it was always toward ourselves, and maybe toward something even greater. Retirement is not the end. It is the slow opening of a sacred space where masks fall, noise fades, and the soul begins to speak a language forgotten by time. You may have walked through decades of duty, sacrifice, and structure, but now you stand at the edge of a vast, unknown territory, one that is quiet, soft, yet full of meaning. Carl Jung did not promise that this journey would be easy. He promised that it would be real, that it would challenge you to confront the illusions you wore for survival, and in doing so, allow your deeper self to emerge, not in perfection, but in truth. And here's something that must be said, even if it's rarely spoken aloud. This final chapter of life, with all its questions and unravelings, has a kind of holiness to it. Not a rigid, dogmatic kind, but a sacredness that comes from being face to face with the mystery of existence. When you sit, alone in a room, and the sun hits your skin just right, when you hear a piece of music and it brings tears to your eyes for reasons you can't explain, when you remember a love long past and feel both ache and gratitude, those moments are not trivial. They are echoes. Something within you recognizes that this life, despite all its imperfections, is deeply precious. And that brings us to something even deeper, something that the human psyche has tried to articulate since the beginning. Love. Not the romantic love of early passion, not the transactional love of social contracts, but the vast, uncontainable love that gives life itself meaning. Jung called it the self. Others call it transcendence. But across cultures, across faiths, across the rich symbols of myth and dream, we find a persistent idea that we are not alone, that something or someone loves us so profoundly, so unconditionally, that our very existence is evidence of it. It's in this space, respectfully and sincerely, that we can reflect on the timeless message found in the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 16. Perhaps you've heard it before, perhaps not, but the verse speaks a truth that resonates even when the words are stripped down to their essence. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. It's not a command. It's not a doctrine. It's a declaration of love, of purpose, of divine intention. Imagine just for a moment that the very force behind the stars, the oceans, the winds, that eternal intelligence and mystery we call God, loves you. Not the role you played, not the mask you wore, but you. The soul that cried quietly in moments of doubt, the person who tried to do good, even when no one noticed, the human who failed, who got back up, who kept walking. What if that part of you is seen and loved completely? This is not about religion as an institution. This is about the possibility of relationship with the divine, with Christ, with a love that asks only one thing: receive it. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. God is not seeking your performance. He is offering you peace, a peace that surpasses understanding, a purpose that transcends your past, a future that outlives fear. And so, in the quiet space you've entered through this video, this exploration of selfhood and depth, of dreams and shadows, of silence and second chances, know that you are not walking alone. The same God who shaped galaxies, who placed eternity in the heart of man, is near. Near enough to whisper into your soul, you are loved. You are known. You are not forgotten. If you felt a stirring in your heart, a warmth in your chest, a quiet voice inviting you deeper, that may not be coincidence. It may be the beginning of the greatest individuation of all, the moment when the soul turns back to its source, when the created reconnects with the Creator, when the weary traveler returns home. You don't need elaborate words. You don't need a ritual. You can speak from the heart, even now, wherever you are, with sincerity, with honesty. You can say something as simple as, God, if you are real, if you truly love me like they say, I want to know you. I want to believe. I want to be whole. I accept Jesus Christ as my Savior, not because I understand everything, but because I feel this truth calling to me. I surrender my fears. I release my shame. I receive your love. And that moment right there is not weakness, it is strength. It is the courage to step into the unknown with open hands. And in that space, you may find something more beautiful than all the careers, achievements, and accolades you've ever earned. Grace. You're not too old. You're not too late. The story is not over. Now, if this message spoke to you in any way, if the themes in this video touched your soul, we would love to walk with you further. This channel is a space for seekers, for thinkers, for those who want to explore the depths of life without pretense. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that like button if this video helped you, and share it with someone you care about. We read every comment. We truly do. So let us know, how did this video resonate with you? Are you in a season of rediscovery? What part of the journey spoke to you most deeply? We'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, your reflections. You see, this isn't just a monologue, it's a conversation, a shared human experience, because we're all searching, we're all evolving. And together, we can walk into these later years, not with fear, but with fire, with clarity, with love. Maybe this is the beginning of a new chapter for you, one where you live not from obligation, but from overflow, one where the final chapters are not a decline, but an ascent into wisdom, into peace, into grace. And maybe, just maybe, the most beautiful part of your story is still ahead. Until next time, take care of your soul. And remember, you are seen, you are loved, and you are never alone.